Welcome to Teleseminar Basics. You're listening to Part 3 of the 4-part series entitled Teleseminar Basics, a beginner's guide to cashing in on teleseminars. Fee structure for teleconference service. There are several different pricing plans available, so before you choose any kind of plan, you want to be sure to develop a business plan in order to identify your needs. You don't want to use a flat rate schedule if your calls would be better served economically by a per-minute plan. The provider should be willing and able to advise you on the best plan for your needs, and may even be able to customize one for you. The more common pricing plans are as follows. Flat rate. This fee structure is common with reservationless service. This involves coming to an agreement with the service provider for a maximum number of call-in lines for a set rate. If the need to increase lines arises, the provider will give you a different price, and it is usually in blocks such as $100 for 20 lines, or 30 lines for $150, and so on. After your first teleseminar, you will have a better idea of how many lines you will need and be able to make a decision accordingly. Initially, you may want to aim a little higher than expected in order to avoid the possibility of having more callers than you can accommodate. You will be given a call-in number along with a host and participant PIN. Unless you need additional services or need to contact technical support, you can arrange your teleseminar at any time for up to your maximum number of callers. If additional features or special call support are needed, you will need to schedule these ahead of time and pay any required fees. Toll per minute service. With this type of service, you are given a regular phone number and calls are billed on a per-minute, per-caller basis. Any long-distance charges would be borne by the caller. 800 per-minute service. You are assigned an 800 number and billed on a per-minute, per-caller basis. This is a more expensive plan than the other options and should be used only if having a toll-free number is a priority for you. This might be something to consider if you are trying to promote a high-priced product and are expecting some very important callers to join the teleseminar. Free service. This service is a good alternative if you don't have a large number of callers. There are a maximum number of callers permitted for the no-fee schedule. Anything beyond that number does have a fee schedule. These are very good for basic services, and although additional services can be provided, it is wise to do some comparison shopping before you commit, since these additional services could actually end up costing you more in the long run. Your specific needs will determine which service and pricing plan is best for you. If you anticipate a large number of calls, or you feel you will need to make unplanned calls on short notice, the best plan is the reservationless flat fee service. If you anticipate doing just a few calls, or your call volume is very large, you may want to think seriously about one-time scheduled calls. How to enhance your presentation. In addition to the features that your teleconference provider has to offer you, several web-based services can be used to enhance your presentation. The addition of visual aids, documentation, and/or increased interactivity within the event can greatly improve the retention of information from your presentation. Not only does it increase the retention rate, but you will also be able to retain the attention of the audience for a much longer period, since people's attention spans are longer for video than for audio alone. These web-based services can also enhance the value of your teleseminar, which could in turn increase the value of the product or service you are trying to promote. In a training-based seminar, these additional services can help get your point across more effectively. Interactivity in itself increases the retention rate of information presented. This has been proven over the years, even at the elementary school level, when they began using different hands-on programs in math and science, as well as other subjects. Seeing something presented in visual form instead of just audio allows the listener to grasp a clearer picture of what you are trying to say. Just think of on-the-job training. A trainer can tell you in great detail how to do the job, but until you actually begin doing it, only a small percentage of what was said in the training makes sense. It only comes together in its entirety when a visual picture is presented. The brain is then able to coordinate what is being said with what is being shown and create a complete picture that makes sense to the student. This combination of audio and visual creates a clearer picture in any type of lecture or training session simply because of the way the human brain functions. How can you add visual aids to your presentation? Well, we've already mentioned a few of these aids such as charts, graphs, PowerPoint presentations, and videos, but let's go into a little more detail and discuss some other forms of visual support as well. 1. Make an outline of your presentation. Since you are making an outline for yourself, you may as well provide one for your listeners as well. That way, they are going to be able to follow along with what you are saying and know just where you are going to be leading them next. It holds their attention longer when they have an idea what you are discussing and what is going to be next on the agenda. 2. Develop notes for your listeners that require them to fill in the blanks. This requires your listeners to really pay attention to what you are saying in order to be able to fill in the missing words. Make these exercises challenging so that your listeners will remain focused in order to know the answers to your questions. 3. Use drawings, diagrams, photos, and flowcharts. These provide visualization and a method to ensure your listeners will retain more of what you have explained. Remember the old saying that one picture is worth 1,000 words? Not only is it a saying, it's a proven fact. These visual tools also help make the picture much clearer and answer any questions that may be on the minds of the listeners. 4. PowerPoint presentation. Through the use of slides, photos, charts, graphs, and much more, PowerPoint allows the presenter to provide visual support for the presentation in a form that will allow the listeners to see for themselves some of the proof behind what you are trying to say, in the form of statistical backup, pictures, and much more. 5. Articles, reports, or books. You can provide a report with the teleseminar. You can refer your listeners to the parts that you want them to note during your presentation. Doing this will also keep your listeners focused on your presentation. 6. Magazines and newspapers. Both of these can be great sources of support material for your presentation. Many of these even offer free access to their online archives. Many times you can just send your listeners to the publication's website in order to access the material. Some publications are more than willing to allow you to pass their articles around as long as you don't remove any of the contact information. 7. E-zines. The internet is full of different e-zines on various subjects. No matter what your subject matter, you are likely to find an e-zine that has an article on your subject of interest. Search for a directory of e-zines and then search for your subject within the e-zine directory. 8. Your website. Make sure to send your listeners to your site if it has content that can be beneficial in helping you to illustrate your points. You can also create special pages or subdomain pages for your teleseminar listeners. Use your personal website to augment your teleseminars and for additional information for your listeners to access. 9. Other people's websites. If you don't have the supporting material on your website or you don't have a website, look for other websites that have the information to support your subject material. As part of your supporting material, provide this information to your callers as a resource for them to research after the teleseminar has ended. 10. Software. Another tool that can be very useful in many ways. Various forms of software can be used to illustrate your presentation points, such as the use of an Excel spreadsheet to demonstrate financial performance of a product or company. These are just some more well-known visual aid tools that are used. But if you are innovative, you can think of some others that may not have ever been used, an added plus. What you are able to develop is going to depend on the subject of your discussion. Following what the industry is doing will help you determine what tools are going to work as well. So always be certain to do in-depth research before you attempt to put your presentation before the public. Visual aids. Visual aids can greatly enhance your presentation and help your listeners with retention. There are several other services worth investigating if you want to increase the potential profitability of your teleseminar. These are, of course, optional, but any combination of these tools has the potential to bring your presentation to life and give it more flair. Some of these methods have already been discussed, but their importance is so high that their use cannot be overstressed. Email. This method can be used not only for promoting and providing follow-up after the teleseminar, it can also be used as a means of communicating during the teleseminar as well. It can also be used to pass messages between hosts or to communicate with the listeners in real time. Instant messaging. Just like with email, this allows the host to interact without being disruptive to the participants of the teleseminar. It is also a helpful tool for participants who wish to ask questions but don't want to be disruptive to the rest of the listeners. This is a feature definitely best left to someone else to handle so that you can concentrate on moderating the call. Have an assistant handle the instant messages and hand you or show you only those items that should be addressed to the group. Websites. As previously discussed, when setting up or updating your website, you want to be certain to include content that will act as a visual aid for your teleseminar presentation. It can also be used to sell transcripts of the teleseminars you have previously recorded. Another way you can use your website to assist in your business is to utilize it to collect information from your participants, process orders, conduct surveys, and provide links to related materials to support your teleseminar. If you don't have a website, you can still use some of the features by providing links to a website that will provide the additional information for your listeners. There is one disadvantage to using websites to augment your presentation. It requires your callers to have access to a computer. Though most everyone in your group at a given time has that access, this is something that would definitely be worth researching prior to your teleseminar so that you know what kind of support material to provide. Remember, you want to address your target audience. So if the majority of your target audience owns or has access to a computer, your support material should be directed to that majority. Don't leave out the ones that don't have computer access, of course, but if you want to make money, you have to cater to the majority. Data conferencing. This type of conferencing takes place on the computer and allows the teleseminar to be conducted with the use of a web browser and software. Data conferencing allows all of the participants to see the presentation being conducted right on their computer screens. In a PowerPoint presentation, the presenter can use the cursor to point to a spot on a diagram, and everyone involved in the presentation can see the same thing at that same moment. Webcasting. This function allows you to broadcast your teleseminar and even present a corresponding web-based presentation live over the internet. Your listeners can go to a specified website and view the entire presentation from their computer, which you control. While listening to the corresponding teleseminar, sometimes these services can even record the audio and visual presentation, which can then be viewed as a rebroadcast whenever someone visits the site. Although this feature is more expensive than a standard teleseminar, it presents an interactive visual component for the participants. The advantage is that the webcasting service provider handles all the details, and if you want visitors to your site to hear and see the rebroadcast, all you need to do is include a link to the site where the teleseminar is being stored. How to increase the value of your teleseminar content. When hosting a teleseminar or any other speaking event, high-value content reigns supreme. This fact cannot be emphasized enough and is the most important lesson to be learned when preparing any kind of presentation. Even on the internet, word of mouth is the best promotion tool. So if your teleseminars are lively and informative, the word is going to spread quickly, just as it would if they are boring and useless. This age of the internet has email, forums, email lists, and instant messenger. Word can spread as quickly as a forest fire. If you want to build a great reputation and put some money in your pocket, it's important that you strive to make your teleseminars relevant, interesting, and useful. Unfortunately, this doesn't always happen, which can result in a damaged reputation and even a major loss of sales. In short, your callers do not want to sit and listen to you just ramble on and say nothing of importance. They dialed into your teleseminar because something in your marketing plan made them think you had something important and useful to tell them. Don't disappoint them. You only have one chance to prove yourself. If you don't attract the callers the first time, there won't be a chance to try again. In this business, the first impression is the lasting impression. Don't try to use fillers just to take up space. Say what it is that you need to say and close. It's better to have a useful 1-hour teleseminar than 2 hours filled with useless babble that doesn't mean a thing to the callers. How do you avoid these pitfalls? The most important way to do that is through organization. Do not attempt to ad-lib your call. Leave that to sports broadcasters. Prepare a detailed outline of what you want to present to your callers and organize your presentation from that. From that detailed outline, make some quick notes or a cheat sheet that you will have in front of you during your presentation. Certainly based on the scope of your callers or questions they may ask, some things may need to be reorganized during the teleseminar. But if you have your thought process organized, making a few on-the-spot changes shouldn't be difficult. It will also prevent you from losing your momentum after a question has been answered. You want to stay focused on your presentation, and a good set of presentation notes will help you accomplish this with ease. In addition to planning and organizing, here are some other ways to avoid losing your callers before you have delivered your message. Survey your target audience prior to scheduling the teleseminar in order to find out what they need, i.e., what they are looking to receive from you during the teleseminar. Make sure you give the audience what they want and not what you think they want. Customize each teleseminar to your target audience whenever possible. It may not always be possible to find out what your audience wants before you speak with them via teleseminar, so be prepared and willing to make some minimal adjustments to your presentation at the last minute. Present your detail based on the listener's level of knowledge and typical experiences. Whenever possible, offer content that is new and unique. When discussing a common product or service, try to tell them something that they haven't heard from every other speaker. Speak to them at their level of education and knowledge. In other words, don't use words only a college-educated person would know if you're speaking to a group of listeners who don't have a college education. Additionally, don't use technologically advanced terminology when your audience doesn't know about the inner components of the product or service you are discussing. We've repeated this several times, but it's of such importance that it justifies reiteration. Create an outline which will allow you to present your information in a way that is easy to follow. This also prevents you from jumping from topic to topic without organization. Not only will you not miss important points you wish to address, you will appear more knowledgeable and professional. Don't use slang, jargon, acronyms, and etc. Explain any terminology you use. More importantly, start with the simplest concepts and move forward to areas that are more complex. Explain the relevance of the information you are providing. Answer the relevant questions right in the beginning: who, what, where, when, and why. You should also tell them the benefits they can expect to receive by applying the concepts or purchasing the goods or services that you are promoting to them in the teleseminar. By doing this, they will be receptive to listening because they want to hear how they can obtain these benefits you have described. This is similar to the hook in a story. If you don't capture their interest in a short time frame, you'll lose them completely. Find out what they want and give it to them in the most interesting way possible. Make lists that your listeners can follow step by step during the presentation. In this way, they can stay focused on what you are saying and have an idea of what is coming next. Perhaps what you are currently discussing doesn't pique their interest, but they see something later on the presentation that they want to know. They'll stay with you so they don't miss what they want to know. Not everything you say is going to interest all of your listeners, but if you plan correctly, every point you address will appeal to someone in your audience. Provide case studies that will allow the listeners to see how the information can be applied to everyday life. Your listeners want to know, how does this affect me? Or, what's in it for me? By providing case studies, you can show them how your message relates to their own situation. Provide some interesting facts, which not only add credibility to your presentation, but will give the listeners bits of information that they can share with others. Along with these facts, Be sure to provide the source of your information so that the listeners can research it in more detail and verify for themselves what you have said. You can reinforce your message by using quotes that are both useful and fun. Citing authorities will give your message more credibility than just your words alone. These quotes, just like facts, give the listener something to share with family, friends, and coworkers after the teleseminar. Include these quotes in your handout so they will be easily available and accessible to your listeners in case they fail to write them down during your talk. Using stories and metaphors can help your listeners to better understand your message. They can be either fiction or real. It doesn't really matter. The important thing is to present the information in a way that will aid in the retention and attention span of your audience. This concept is similar to telling your 6-year-old why he or she can't go outside in the snow without a coat. If you simply say, they will catch a cold, you'll probably get, cool, then can I stay home from school? On the other hand, if you tell them about someone real or fictional who did the same thing and ended up in the hospital with pneumonia during Christmas vacation, the answer is somewhat different. Be sure to cite your sources. Letting your listeners know where you got your information helps substantiate your subject material. This, of course, gives it much more credibility and can be a source of reference for further study as well. This is another point that cannot be stressed enough. You want your listeners to believe what you are saying, and they can only do that if you give them the information they can verify. Be sure not to exaggerate any statistic, because listeners will lose faith in you when they find that the truth is not actually as complex as you made it seem. How to decide the subject matter for your teleseminar. You have most of the information about how to set up a teleseminar line, how to promote your teleseminar, what equipment you'll need, how to conduct research, what kinds of extra features are available, and other similar topics. What we haven't discussed is how to determine the subject matter for your talk. Naturally, you don't want to fall into the category we previously discussed, talking for an hour or two and not saying anything of importance. To avoid doing that, the first step is to choose a subject in which you have an interest. Most people can give a much more compelling talk on a subject that interests them rather than something they find boring. It just stands to reason that if the subject matter is boring to you, you're not going to be able to present it enthusiastically to your listeners. How do you decide what your potential audience wants to hear? If you are a salesperson of wares, it's a little easier because you want to sell your product, though with each sales presentation, you may want to focus on something different. This can be predetermined by your preliminary survey or through previous sales in the area where your listeners live. After all, you're not going to succeed in selling a snowblower if most of your audience lives in Hawaii. Likewise, you won't succeed in selling swimming pools to people who live in Alaska. The point is that you have to direct your talk to your audience and not to just what you would like to discuss at that particular time. It goes back to catering to the needs of the listeners, a very important part of good salesmanship. Even if you're not selling a product, you still must be a salesperson in order to draw in the listeners. Directing your teleseminar toward what your audience wants to hear brings us back to another subject we have previously discussed, organization. In order to know what your target audience wants, you have to do some research. By now you are probably thinking that it sounds like you're back in high school or college, but research in this business is extremely important. Polls and surveys are great tools to use and to accomplish this, and a good idea is to do this at the close of each teleseminar. Your audience has already heard you speak, so you can ask their opinion about the information provided, what they would like to know next time, and if your presentation met their approval. If this is your first teleseminar presentation and you aren't sure, research the area where your target audience is located to find out what is popular there in terms of related products and services. This includes reading newspapers, advertisements, sales circulars, and any other media sources that will assist you in closing in on the wants and needs of your potential target audience. Of course, if you are selling a service or are a public speaker selling information to the public, it's a little more difficult to know what the public would like to know. Much more research is required here, including determining what other speakers have already presented on your potential subject. An easy way to lose your audience is to say the same thing everyone else has already discussed. You have to do something fresh, say something that hasn't been said by anyone else, or your listeners will become bored. They've already heard how to turn housework into a calorie-burning session, but if you can tell them how to do the same thing while watching television, you have just grabbed their attention. Another thing you want to do is to make sure you know the subject matter that you are discussing. Don't try to tell your audience how to rebuild an automobile engine when you don't even know how to get out of your own car. Likewise, don't try to teach your audience how to cook when your experience is in opening a box and putting it in the oven or microwave. Aside from losing your audience, you will succeed in losing your credibility with future audiences. If you truly want to discuss a subject about which you have little knowledge, have a backup speaker who is an expert on the subject and can answer any questions your audience might have. If a second speaker isn't possible, do enough research that you are able to answer any questions that may arise. If a question is presented that you truly don't know how to answer, admit that you don't know the answer and offer to research it and get back to the caller with the answer. You can also use some of the other methods stated earlier when discussing a subject that is unfamiliar, such as citing sources, directing your audience to a website, and using books and other visuals that are prepared by the experts in that field. It is not impossible to host a successful teleseminar on unfamiliar subjects, but it will require much more research and preparation than speaking on subjects with which you are familiar. Once you choose your subject material for the teleseminar, your next step is to create an outline of the key points you want to discuss. The purpose of this initial outline is to assist you in researching the information you wish to present. This outline will help you make sure your research is complete and focused. Your next step in preparing your teleseminar is to organize your research material in the way you wish to present it to your audience. This prevents you from having to search through your material to find out if you have everything that you are going to need. You then need to create a final outline, which will be the basis of the cheat sheet you will use when you actually present your information to the participants. It seems like a great deal of outlining, but once you get started, you will find that these outlines are useful both in researching your subject and in presenting the material. If this is the first time you have presented this particular information, you might want to do a trial run with a friend or coworker to get a feel for both your presentation and the amount of time it will take for you to present it. Keep in mind that as you do this, the participants may want to ask you questions, so you need to allow for extra time in the actual presentation. If this is your first teleseminar, you might even want to rehearse your presentation several times before you present it live in order to iron out any inconsistencies in your delivery. You do not want your listeners to know that this is your first teleseminar. Instead, you want them to think you are experienced and know exactly what you are doing. Even if you have done teleseminars in the past or even yesterday, always make sure to check all of your equipment, both audio and video, your handouts, notes, outline, and anything else that you are going to need. As previously stated, check to make sure your voice is clear on the telephone and use a regular landline phone instead of a cordless or cell phone. Everything that you are going to need should be placed by the phone before anyone starts calling, including water or other beverages of choice. Why you should host your own teleseminar. You've conducted the research, read a couple of books on the subject, and maybe even interviewed some business executives, but you still aren't sure if it's a marketing tool that you are interested in using. You aren't completely convinced that this type of promotion is right for you. Maybe you're a skeptical motivational speaker and aren't sure if hosting a teleseminar will create the same excitement that is generated in a room full of people. You want to know the chances of success in being a teleseminar host, and you want enough information to know if you are making the right decision. Unfortunately, in a country where free enterprise is a way of life, there are no guarantees that any venture you undertake is going to be a success. All any of us can do is work hard, develop a good business and marketing plan, and in the end, we hope for the best. Some people are going to do better than others, but that is the way that free enterprise works. You just have to be willing to take a chance on yourself and be willing to work very hard to accomplish the goals that you have set. So why be a teleseminar host? After years of being just a means of communication for people who work at home and to assist companies with long-distance meetings, teleseminars have begun to take on a whole new dimension as a new method of generating income. It has also become a major source of profits for internet marketing. It's a concept that is so simple that it had to be a success. Failure is just impossible. After all, this method opens up so many opportunities that take you much less time and energy than other ways of promoting your website. It's certainly easier and has more potential for success than sending out sales letters or traveling all over the country to speak to groups of people who may not know anything about you before your arrival. Besides, in an average auditorium, if filled to capacity, you might comfortably seat perhaps 3,000. By using teleseminars and internet promotion, you can at least triple that amount without the cost of travel. You may not start out speaking to that many people at one time, but by scheduling your teleseminars at different times of the day and evening, you can fit in well over that amount from the comfort of your own home. There are 3 benefits to hosting your own teleseminar. There may be others, but these are the main ones. Number 1, you're only a phone call away. In today's economy and fast-paced environment, people are less apt to travel outside of their homes for seminars, classes, and even business meetings. They would much rather pick up the telephone and take care of their business without having to leave the comfort of their own home. Number 2, attendees feel good about participating. No one is made to feel inferior because everyone is on the same level. Unlike a huge room full of people with a speaker above the crowd speaking from the podium and looking down at the crowd, the telephone is able to relieve any feelings of inferiority and allows you to speak to the crowd on their level as their friend. As a result, they don't see you as someone who is better than they are. Number 3, teleconferences have the ability to create their own money. There are many ways that this can be done, and even if the conference is a free one, it saves people time, money, and creates trust so that you are able to sell more of your products or services. If you are charging for the event, it's almost pure profit since the overhead for a teleseminar is minimal in comparison to what it would be for a live seminar. Holding your own teleseminar is one of the easiest ways to make a great deal of money in a short period of time. Sound too good to be true? Let's look at a hypothetical situation. Let's assume that you have found a foolproof way to prevent your basement from flooding during heavy rain. It is a process so innovative that it goes far beyond simply installing and maintaining a sump pump, and you want to share it with others by doing a teleseminar presentation. You complete your research, have your line set up, your handouts ready, and you decide to charge a fee of $30 for this conference. If you present this information to only 100 people, you have made $3,000 for conducting a presentation that took less than 2 hours. Of course, there was preparation in advance, setup fees, the cost of promotion, and some other overhead costs, but a gross profit of $1,500 per hour isn't bad, is it? How many people do you know who can make that kind of money while sitting at home? You can if you're willing to do the work that is required to accomplish it. In the previous hypothetical example, you have not only done the work involved, but you have done something else important, given your listeners something that no one else has. If you can earn that kind of money in just 2 hours, how much do you think your potential is by doing teleseminars several times a week? What is the potential if you are in a position to make this your primary source of income? Have you thought about the potential of being a teleseminar host? Have you done the math and compared those figures to what you are currently making? If so, then you have to agree that doing teleseminars even part-time will assure you a better and more stable future than your current position. Now that you have made the decision, you can do one of the following. A. Sit back and do nothing, thereby allowing the opportunity to pass you by. Remember, opportunity may only knock once. If you don't open the door, there is no guarantee you will have another opportunity. B. Start doing some research and become an expert in something. Choose a subject that appears to be drawing a great amount of interest and read all you can on that subject. Become an expert or at least very knowledgeable. Gain all the insight you can on your chosen subject before you attempt to present it to a target audience. C. Interview someone who is a known expert in the field. Reading books and magazines is fine, but there is no greater knowledge derived than interviewing someone who knows your subject well. Besides the interview format being more interesting than reading books, you may also be able to call on this person's expertise when you are ready to conduct your teleseminar. Of course, you may have to share some of the profits with your information source, but in the end, it will be a great benefit because it will probably draw a larger crowd. Now, on the other end of the scope, there are several benefits to the participants of a teleseminar as well. They are very convenient. All they have to do is dial up on their telephone in order to participate. There is no need to drive anywhere, fighting traffic to get there, or finding a parking spot when they arrive. They are very high quality for the most part. If the presenter has done his or her homework, the information they receive will be well documented and from reliable sources. It will be based on a hot topic, or have a new swing to a previously discussed topic. In other words, if the topic is a popular one, the teleseminar presenter has researched the subject and found something related to the topic that is new and unique. The presenter will help them apply what they have learned instead of just giving them the information and walking away. He or she will show them how to use the information and apply it to their own life. By doing this, the presenter is leaving the participants with something to share to their friends, relatives, and business associates. The important thing to understand is that being a teleseminar host must benefit your participants in order for it to benefit you. You cannot be mediocre in your presentation and expect to gain more participants. It goes back to what we've said before. Find out what the listeners want and give it to them. It is impossible to make the business successful any other way. Your potential target audience knows what they want to hear, and if you don't offer it to them, they will find another speaker who will, losing you many potential customers in the process. People are very fickle. Even though they may like the way you approach your subject material, they won't listen if you don't say anything that they want to hear. The old saying, "Time is money," is appropriate in this kind of business because you want to present a topic that is going to be of interest in as short of time as possible. Your audience is going to tire of hearing you simply fill in time. They want you to say what you need to say and close. How to convert telephone calls into powerful teleseminar presentations. The addition of web-based presentations can increase your ability to persuade by 400% no matter what the age of your listeners. By showing rather than just telling, you draw them into the presentation and allow them to see a first-hand replication of what you are trying to say. According to a study performed by Wharton Business School, this dual method of communication makes your presentation up to 4 times more effective than just speaking. These web-based presentations can be as effective as an in-person presentation, but without the cost of traveling. In addition to the cost, there is also the frustration of traffic jams, running for airplanes or trains, and finding a decent hotel. Even before arriving, it can be frustrating to try and locate a decent and convenient auditorium in which to hold your seminar. Teleseminars take all of that away since you don't have to leave the comfort of your home or office. There is no audience too large or too small for a web-based presentation. It doesn't matter if you are speaking to individual prospects or to an entire group. You can show your presentation cost-effectively to both large and small groups with a web-based presentation. Because your visuals are available 24 hours a day, there is no need for reservations in order to make a presentation. Any telephone call can be turned into a presentation by simply telling your callers to access your online visuals while you are talking to them. Any presentation that can be done in person can be done on the telephone or as a web-based application. Demonstrations, showing as well as telling, will give your participants a better idea of the benefits they can derive from your product or services. Give your prospect a systematic look at what you plan to use to help them solve a pressing problem or reach an important goal. Previews can increase attendance by showing prospects the benefits that they can hope to receive by attending your presentation. Continuous contact with your clients and prospects while they make their informed decisions will improve your relationship with them and ensure continued support and future business. Making your presentation in an interactive environment allows your voice to build enthusiasm and allows you to address any concerns or questions that may be presented during the presentation. This business is all about relationships. Web-based presentations are just another tool that are available to assist you in doing that. Its low cost allows you to communicate with many people at once right from the comfort of your home or office. On the other hand, teleseminars have a bit of mystery about them that cannot be denied. Perhaps it's because of certain intimacy that is created by the sound of voices coming together. Maybe it's because of the feeling of it being an out-of-body experience being involved in a teleseminar. It is the mysterious aura that surrounds it that makes it appeal to so many people. The way you conduct your teleseminar, your voice, the way you come across to people, how you draw them in, all these are going to be your mark, your style, if you will. Just as certain people you're meeting have what we call charisma, something that draws us to them without much effort, so you will find the niche that allows you to do that. Each one of us has that style to draw people into our lives. How and when we choose to use it will determine our success. In other words, we each have the potential to be salespeople, but how we choose to utilize our potential is the key to our success. Think of it this way. If you have a job, you have succeeded in selling yourself. If you can sell yourself, then you can sell a product or service in order to improve your lifestyle. It may take time to learn how to be successful at selling, but it's completely possible if the desire is there. The easy part about a teleseminar is that it works in many ways like a retail store in that customers or participants are already interested in what you have to sell. Unlike cold calling, door-to-door sales, or even network or multi-level marketing programs such as Herbalife, Amway, and others, your customers already know what you are trying to sell them and are interested in hearing more. It doesn't matter if your product or service is a class or a new beauty product. Your pre-teleseminar information gave enough information to draw a crowd. Each of these participants is interested enough to be willing to pay the requested fee to find out more information. You are halfway there already. You just have to present your product in such a way that you convince them the rest of the way. This concludes Part 3 of the 4-part series entitled Teleseminar Basics, a beginner's guide to cashing in on teleseminars. Thank you for listening. For more teleseminar resources, such as sample seminar forms and other useful links, visit us on the web at www.teleseminar-basics.com/download. That's www.teleseminar-basics.com/download.